Hey gamers, in this episode we're going to take a look at another game that I played years ago, Dragon Ball Z, the adventure game. Hey gamers, welcome back to Game Master's Dungeon. I'm Brian, your Game Master. And today, like I said, we're going to take a look at the Dragon Ball Z adventure game. Now it's an old game, no longer supported by the company that makes it. Our Tulsaran games, it's their fusion system. Instant fusion actually is what it says in the book. I played this game when I was in high school. I think the copyright in the first book, the basic adventure game book, is like 1999. So some of you are like, wow, that's old. Why are we going to talk about that? Well, it's really the only official Dragon Ball Z that I know of, role-playing game that was printed. I played a lot of it. It was a lot of fun. It gives you a lot of room for creativity. I just have a lot of great memories, and I love Dragon Ball Z, and I'm assuming at least one or two of you maybe like Dragon Ball Z. If you do, in the comments below, tell me who your favorite character is, because I want to hear that. So, with all of that, let's go ahead and take a look in the book. Alright gamers, so here we are. We're looking at our Dragon Ball Z adventure game. Old school, like this book is almost 20 years old. Like I've said, I played this in high school a lot with my friends. I have a lot of great memories of this game. I love Dragon Ball Z. I loved it since I was a kid. And hope you guys enjoy the game or the show as well, and hopefully maybe find interest in this game if you're able to find these books online somewhere. Probably through eBay they're going to be used because they're so old, but definitely worth picking up if you want to play some Dragon Ball Z. Hopefully someday maybe they'll come out with like a new version of a Dragon Ball Z role-playing game, which would be pretty cool without having to do homebrew or converting other systems into Dragon Ball Z. I would love something more official like this was. But let's go ahead and jump in. Now we're going to skip, to start off, we're going to skip all this stuff in the front. Okay, skip all that stuff in the front. And we're going to go right here. Okay, basic training. So your rules section is starting on page 63. It's about halfway through the book. The book itself is only 142. Yeah, 141 pages long, right? So the game isn't, the book isn't that big. All this right up here, no rules in here. None. No rules. And most of this stuff in the back, no rules. No rules. It's got like GMing and campaign guides and stuff like that. But we're going to get into the meat of the rules, and then we're going to go back and look at some of the the big name characters of the series, so you can kind of see what their stats look like. The one thing I liked about this was when I first got it, I was like, wow, this is like a coloring book. I could color these guys. Which I'll just show you right quick. I don't know if any of you are going to, maybe you guys think it bad or whatever. You can critique me on my 20-year-old coloring. But, you've got Goku. So this is from the Frieza Saga book. I colored Goku, because it's all black and white, and Gohan, I got bored and I wanted some color, because there's no color in these books. Like, you've got a color cover and a back cover, the rest of it is all black and white, so it's pretty bland, but for the time, it was great. Okay, so we got basic training, so you're going to learn mastering the rules of the game, how to create your own Dragon Ball Z warrior, and creating and using power and energy powers. So we're going to go in, okay? So you're going to get getting started. So what is an adventure game? Like a lot of role-playing games have, it's going to have, what is a role-playing game? What is an adventure game? It's going to tell you, one player, the game master, da-da-da-da-da-da. You will be the player characters. You will interact with non-player characters or NPCs. It talks about how do I play, what else does the referee/GM do? They prepare a story, da-da-da-da. Like all other games have. How do I GM? Right? We also always include an example of a role-playing session in the sidebars in some of these. Now, you're going to get really familiar with these. These are almost on every single page. These sidebars, they're going to have different rules, or they're going to have, like, episode references. Like, it's really cool how it's done. But sometimes I think it gets a little monotonous over time, having to read all these little sidebars. But the rules of the game, it uses R. Tolstoy's old instant fusion system. It is a fast, very easy set of rules designed to get you up and playing in only a few minutes. And when I say only a few minutes, I mean only a few minutes. Like, it takes you about maybe an hour to read through this section of rules twice to get the hang of it, and then you can create characters in seriously like 2 minutes flat. Like, it's easy. Also, I'll even show you how it's done. There will not be a character creation video for this, just because we're gonna do one basically in the middle of this book review. Okay. So characteristics. So you're gonna have 4 characteristics: physical, mental, combat, and move. All right. Physical, how strong and healthy you are. Mental, how smart and determined. Combat is how well you fight. Move is how far your hero moves. 1 point of move is equal to 2 yards. Then you have 2 derived stats. Your defense is 5 times your physical stat. So defense is how tough your hero is. You subtract defense from any damage done to your hero. Your hits, or your hit points, or HP, however you want to say it, is 10 times your physical. Once you subtract your defense, the remainder goes to your hits. Once you reach 0, you're knocked out or could potentially die, up to your GM. Right? So that's it. Right there. Super simple. Then it goes into skills here. So you've got your 6 skills: your body, mind, evasion, fighting, weapon, and power. So body, anything to do with physical stuff. Mind, anything to do with mental stuff. Evasion, how good you are not getting hit. Fighting skills, how good you are at hitting things. Your weapon skills, how good you are at hitting things with a weapon, like Trunks, how he uses a sword. He has a really good weapon skill. And then power, how good you are at using any special powers. So this can either physical or mental. In Dragon Ball Z, these are also known as energy attacks. So like Kamehameha, the Final Flash, Destructo Disc, Special Beam Cannon, all that stuff is governed under the power skill. Using the skill, right? So you have difficulty values, kind of like how Dungeons and Dragons does, like a DC, of X. You roll, and you add your stat, your characteristic, and your skill, plus this game uses 3d6 for everything. 3d6. So you roll 3d6 plus your skill plus your characteristic, and then you compare it to this difficulty value. Now you'll see difficulty value ranges from 10, which is no problem, to 26, make a hard. It even shows you a little stat block right here. Action total, it's characteristic plus skill plus 3d6. If you meet or beat the difficulty value, you succeed. If you roll all ones, you automatically fail. Okay? Now if you use skills against each other, so like you're fighting an opponent, it's your characteristic plus skill plus 3d6 plus their characteristic plus skill plus 3d6. So my physical plus fighting versus your physical plus evasion. Right? Easy enough. 3 ones, automatically fail. Combat, then it talks about the combat time. So each phase, or round, turn, is 3 seconds long. You can do one thing per phase. We're going to talk about how you can do more later. And then so there's 4 phases in a round. At the end of each round, all heroes and bad guys get back any hits they have lost, up to 2 times their physical and lost hits. If the attacks have not been especially lethal, so like bullets, knives, or lasers, or whatever the GM says, if the heroes or bad guys have lost more hit points than they recover, they are still hurt and must wait until the end of the next round to get more hit points back. Then it goes into taking turns. Each phase, the hero or bad guy with the highest mental characteristic gets to go first. 2 characters have a tie for the highest. The person with the highest combat value goes first. If they're still tied, they go at the same time. Then it goes into movement. A move is roughly equal to 2 meters or 2 yards, depending upon, like here in America, we use yards. If you're from Europe or pretty much any other country that uses the metric system, you would use meters. Okay. Then like here in the sidebar, it's got stuff about modifiers. Making it easier, making it more difficult, just like other games have modifiers to skill checks and things like that. It has it as well. Then also over here it has some sample difficulties like putting gas in the car versus invent a hyperdrive motor. Or a difficulty value of 60, write a role-playing game, right? Well, 60, like it doesn't show that. That's something you kind of have to come up with as the GM. Okay? This goes into actions, the things that you can do on your turn in each phase. So you have a pretty decent list. Attack, block, dodge, get up, grab, run, sprint, throw, power up, use your power up skill, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Then it goes into fighting, so making attacks. So physical attack, maybe with fists, feet, tails, anything that's not energy based, will be governed under the fighting skill, physical plus fighting. Then it's got some conditions, like line of sight. Are you close enough? If you're within range, like if you're using a bow or whatever. Then it goes into making the attack. So it would be my physical plus fighting plus 3d6 versus the opponent's physical plus evasion plus 3d6 to see if I hit or not. Damage, this is where we're going to get a little wonky, which is one of the things I'll talk about later, but the game can explode real fast or not very fast, depending upon how you want to play it. So when you hit with an attack, you do a number of dice of damage. Now these are all d6s, equal to your physical plus fighting. So say I have a physical stat, a characteristic of 10, and a fighting of 20. If I successfully hit you, I roll 30 d6 of damage against you. Then, whatever I end up rolling, you subtract your defense from that, and then you take the remainder to your hits stat. So if I roll really bad, I don't do a lot of damage. But if I roll a bunch of 5s and 6s, it's pretty bad for everybody. Also, then if you're using a weapon, they may add dice of damage, like a sword or a bow might add extra dice of damage to the attack. Then it talks about knockback. To see if you get knocked back, subtract the number of attack dice from the target physical characteristic plus 1 die. The result is the move distance of knockback done. Let's go to an example. Sama is hit with a 24 dice attack. Although he is unharmed with a physical of 20, he still has a chance of taking knockback. He rolls a 2 for a total of 22. The result is that he is knocked back 2 move, or 4 meters, 4 yards. Later on, you'll get to the point where you're going to I take 300 dice of damage minus my physical of 70. You go miles away, just like they do in the show, which is, pretty cool. It gives you a real sense of when you see those epic fights in the shows, and you can get that same kind of feel with this game. Okay. Talks about collision. So when you're getting knocked back and you hit stuff, there's collision damage that you can take. Then there's other kinds of damage. So like from disease, burns, drug poison, shock, that kind of stuff. Talks about recovering. Generally, each round in which you are resting or being healed, you get back as many hit points as your physical characteristic. See. So he has physical 5, he gets back 5 hits every round. However, if the GM has determined the damage you have taken is especially deadly, you recover maybe in hours or even days instead of rounds. We'll see, you look at that. And then we go back. At the end of each round, all heroes and bad guys get back any hits they have lost up to 2 times their physical. And lost hits. So it says 2 times here, 1 times here. Okay? Some of the things that I didn't like about the game was like, the inconsistency of like it's times 2 here, it's 1 here. It's just kind of weird. So you just kind of have to pay, what do you do? Do you go to the times 2 or do you just do the times 1? It's up to you, really. Then page 71, then it goes into the Great Tournament Kami's Lookout. So this is like a little mini adventure, right, that you're going to be able to do. So Kami is looking for a new Z Warrior to join the ranks. So, because every year the greatest warriors of the Dragon Ball Z universe convene to see just who is the best fighter of all. Normally, this gathering is called the Tenkaichi Budokai, and it's held at a special arena in the Dragon Ball Z world. So everybody's going to get together at Kami's Lookout. See, you even have a cool little map. You know, the lookout. You won't need much more of a map to work from. It's basically a big circle. Okay. Here, it's got 4 pre-generated characters for you to play with. That you as a GM, and then you've got 4 players, and then you can quickly make another character. You'll see I've made some pencil marks in some of this throughout this book. Like I said, this was 20 years ago. I was just coming up with some ideas on how I can maybe make some changes as the game scales to like a higher level. But so just ignore those. Just look at whatever's in print. Okay. As you can see, like this is one character sheet right there. Character sheet's done. Honestly, really, the basic character sheet is just that. That's your character. This is like your background, personality, your history, shticks or quirks, and then a list of some of your special fighting techniques, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So you see, it's super easy to create a character. So the character creation section is here in a little bit. We'll talk to that then. So this basically you're gonna fight each other. You make like a little 4-man tournament bracket. You know, every player will get a character. Then you're gonna fight each other. It's a good way to learn the system. Super easy. After that, then it goes into advanced training. So this is that area where your background. What species are you? Are you human, Namekian? Are you Saiyan? Because it's got rules. All right. So like Saiyan's powerhouse of the Dragon Ball Z world. So far, closely resembling humans, Saiyans are distinguished by their long, black, spiky hair and a love of combat. They're much like humans in size and shape, but have amazing endurance. They also change uncontrollably into a giant were-ape at the sight of the full moon. To become a Saiyan, you must roll a 2 or less on 2d6. So basically, if you want to play these more powerful races, you have to roll to see if you can. The game says you have to roll to see if you can become one. And to be a Namek, you need to roll 3 or less. It's really up to your GM to allow you to be other races. Just know that humans will not scale as well as like Saiyans and Namekians, just like they did in the show. I mean, Krillin's great, Tien's great, Yamcha's great, right? I guess. I mean, I like them all. Some of you may be like anti whatever, but you'll notice that Piccolo is stronger. Goku is stronger than him. It's just kind of how it goes. And the role-playing game is kind of the same way. Namekians do get the insta-healing, though. So like how Piccolo regrows his arm, you're able to do stuff like that. Let's see. Then this is like, what do you like? So talking about your personality and things like that. How did you become a warrior? Basically, this is going to go into your background. You're going to develop your character, right? So you're going to come to this. I've got numbers on a page. How can I turn this into an actual person? That's what this section right here is. All right. So then we get into some characteristics, right? So your physical, mental, combat, move. You get 40 points to distribute among those 4 stats, and every stat has to have at least 1 point in it. So if you want to make it just super easy, put 10 in each. You know, or however you want to divide it up, but every stat must have at least 1 point, so you can't leave anything blank. Then you derive your 2 characteristics from it. So defense, so if I put a 10 in physical, I have 50 defense, and I have 100 hit points, or 100 hits. Okay? Skills, 6 skills in instant fusion, right? We've talked about them before. How do you know how many points you get? You get 50 points to distribute among them, but not every skill must have points. Maybe your guy doesn't use weapons, doesn't know how to use them. You don't put any points in weapons. I don't know, or maybe your guy just can't evade. I wouldn't suggest that. Most of the time, the thing that gets neglected the most that I remember was the weapon skill. Because I mean, Trunks is cool with his sword, but you know, Goku, Vegeta, all that stuff. Those were the really cool guys. I like Trunks. Don't get me wrong, but in the end, the sword doesn't stand up to, you know, like a 10,000 energy die attack. Now we get into creating special fighting techniques. So this is where you kind of get to do your own thing. So basically, you talk about the characteristic plus fighting plus 3 dice to determine if you hit. But obviously, you're not just going to stand around, punching and regular kicking. Special techniques you're going to create are special fighting moves. Like example, so they got this Karma Sin guy here from back a few pages. So he's got the Karma Thunder Blast. He's got the Howling Wind Punch. Right? These are special techniques that you can visualize. When it says extra dice, they do extra dice of damage. So the Howling Wind Punch does 5 extra dice of damage. But for every dice of damage that your special technique is going to do, you must subtract 1. So right here, determine the technique's cost. Subtract 1 from your fighting skill when using the technique. Right? It does more damage, but it's harder to hit. And then you're going to name the technique something appropriate. I remember, I'm trying to remember some of the techniques that one of my players had back in high school. It was so long ago. I think one guy had like a big roundhouse kick he called the spin mill. It was like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I thought it was pretty cool. But it's stuff like that, right? You come up with a cool attack. It's like basically a basic punch or a kick, but that's more flamboyant, and it's got a cool name. And you can create as many as you want. You don't have a limit on how many you can. But obviously you're not going to want 50 of them, You just have a handful. Okay? Then you got special techniques in combat here. Right? With a special technique, it's just like making any other melee attack. Add your combat characteristic, fighting skill, 3d6. Each die of damage, subtract 1 from the fighting skill. It says it twice, right here and here. And then see, look, right here. Character sheets. Yeah, don't mind. No, like I said, don't mind this. So these 2 pages have 4 character sheets. It's like super easy. Look, that's a character sheet. My players would come over and I would be like, oh, you want to play? Here. I would have these printed off and just cut, and then there you go. And they sit there in like 2 minutes. They get this section done, then they take about 5 to come up with this, and they are ready to play. Right? Nowadays, obviously, I would be like, oh, I want more background. I want more history. I want more story. And things like that. And then I would be, oh, special techniques. How did you know those? Who taught them to you? Did you develop them yourself? That kind of stuff. Then we go into special training. We're talking powers. Now when we're talking powers, we're talking using the power level. Now, anybody that knows anything about Dragon Ball Z has your power level. So your ki, your energy. So this section here talks about what that is. And then this is how you determine what your power level is. So how you determine your power level, you roll 2d6. So the first dice is the hundreds. I rolled a 4, so I have 430. My power level is 430. Not even really level 1 because the game doesn't use levels. But yeah, and then in this example, he rolls a 5 and a 3. He's got 530. Okay? And then you can only gather and use power in multiples of 10. So you can't use 4 energy or 4 ki or whatever you want to call it. Raising energy. You can only gather as much energy as your mental plus physical stats added together and multiplied by 10. So this is what your power up. Right? So you have your power level, then your power up. So this is known as the power up rate. So Karma Sin has a mental of 10, physical of 12, 22. So he has 220 power up. In this example, he's got 530 power level. He gets 220 power up. Okay. Now how this is going to work. So when you start a fight, you're fully rested. You have 530 power, but you start with 0. Only like when you watch the show or whatever, I think it's during the Trunks saga, Trunks shows up and Frieza reads him as super low power level. That means he hasn't accumulated any power. So I've got 530, and they say, on my turn, I'm going to power up. I'm going to take 220. I'm going to subtract it from my total, temporarily, and then I'm going to add that into a pool. You have to do some math keeping, right? So I got my actual, what I have access to, and then you're going to power up is going to pull some from your power level into a pool that's going to be able to then be used. You cannot pull energy directly from your power level. You have to power up first. Okay? Important. That's one of the things when I was younger, it took me a while to figure out. I don't know why, but now that I look back at it, I'm like, wow, this is super easy. Power skills. This is going to give you a sidebar option on page 86. When you use a power, you have to meet a difficulty value to see if you're even able to manifest it, to put it in so many terms. Basically, you divide the amount of power points you put into it by 10, and that's what the difficulty is. So in this example, they put 100 points of energy into it. They divide by 10, so they must beat a difficulty value of 10 to throw the attack. Now, if they put 450 points, the difficulty value would be 45. Then I like all the stuff in bold is like super important text, the stuff you want to pay attention to. Using a power exactly like using any other kind of skill. Only in this case, you use your power skill instead of your fighting skill. And then plus 3d6. Okay? And then, let's see. How much energy can you use? In theory, you can, if you can master the attack, you can put in as much energy as you have available. But the reality is most characters are probably never going to have enough skill to actually master a 10,000 point technique. And even if they did, it would take a very long time to gather that power together and use it. But you don't have to put it together right away, right? You can just several turns of powering up. I mean, 300 points of damage, or 300 points into an attack is still enough to obliterate an aircraft carrier. And guys like Goku and Vegeta don't even think twice about tossing around thousands of points of energy with a single attack. And then it talks about special energy effects. So like as you're powering up, so you accumulate 100 points, you begin to glow. 2, wind starts to howl. And once you've accumulated 3,000 or more, mountains start to crumble and skies go black, just like they do in the show. So this is like as you've accumulated the energy that's gone into that pool that can then be spent, that's where that effect comes from. Then it goes into how do you get the energy back. For each hour you spend resting, you gain your power-up rate back to your power level. So basically it goes from here, it goes back. Right? It goes, you get it back. Even if you spent this other pool over here, so you took out, say you used it all, after an hour, you get your power-up rate back into your power level. Okay? How do you get more power? Training. So it talks about the amount of energy you can generate, amount of energy you can gather, amount of energy you can control. As a rule, a normal human will gain 10 points of experience for every year of training. But the best way to gain experience is obviously through fighting, which you gain a lot more. And then it goes into several other training. So say you have the old time skip training montage that you see in some of the shows, right? You're like, oh, I just spent 10 years at the Kami House, just swinging punches out in the water. I get 10 XP, which is crap. But then we're going to talk about fighting, okay? Go talk about the pendulum room, magical enchantments, getting zapped to another world. You can master the Kaioken. The Kaioken is really cool. Anyone that knows Dragon Ball Z, obviously it damages the body for gaining power. So this is the technique Kaioken taught. This is the technique King Kai taught Goku. The fighter trades his endurance for energy, basically burning himself out to add more to his power level. Once this extra power is used up, however, it is gone and doesn't regenerate itself like a natural power level would. It's a fast but temporary way to gain more power if you're really desperate. Basically, a single, a double, and a triple does it. A single Kaioken, it doubles your power level. Double triples and a triple quadruples. Okay? But then it costs, to do a triple Kaioken, you burn yourself out 240 hits. So you're not using this at the beginning of the game. Even a single will almost kill most starting characters. So this is a leader game technique. Because he's got an example right here. Karma has a physical of 12, giving him 120 hits. He burns 60 hits in a single Kaioken, raising his power level from 530 to 1060. But that boost cost him half his hits. All right, so you pay for what you get. Then it talks about fighting to gain experience. Basically, divide your opponent's power level by your power level, rounding up to the nearest whole number, then multiplying by 10. So in this example, they fight a guy that's 2600 power level. The guy is 530. You do the math, it's 4.9. Run it up to 5. He gains 50 experience points. One fight with that guy, he gains 5 years worth of experience. Just from regular training that you can then spend. But then on the other side, the other guy, the guy that's 2600, gains like 2 XP. So yeah, so you just gotta. So if you're GMing, make sure that these guys are fighting these villains. Give the villains more experience, right? Because they're gonna improve as well. Then it goes into applying your experience. Basically, you get the 50 experience. You spend it in increments of 10. So like he increases his power level by plus 10, his power up rating by 20, and his power skill by 20, for a total of 50 experience he spent. Then it goes into another examples. And this, what does 30 points really mean in the real world? You know, you can destroy a huge ship. For 12,800 energy into an attack, you can destroy Jupiter. All right, then we talk about power. We talk about energy blasts. All energy attacks operate in the same way. For every point of energy placed in an energy attack, the attack causes 1 die of damage. But then you'll look... I'm just going to jump ahead just to kind of show you one of the things that always threw me off. Using power attacks, put power into attack in increments of 10. 10 points equal 1 die of damage. Right here. Right? So it's kind of like, which do you use? See, there's a big difference between 10 equals 1 or 1 equals 1. Because 1 equals 1, people will be throwing around 50-point attacks and throwing 50 dice and killing people in a single shot at early levels. So that's something, if you're going to GM this game, something you're going to want to look at. So then you have to, obviously you have to roll to activate the attack, and then you have to hit with it as well. Okay, and then you've got these other things you can add to it, like homing, bending, make area effects. You can delay it. You can throw it out there, and it delays for a turn or whatever, and then it explodes. Rapid fire, you know, kind of like what you see like Vegeta do. You can add that as well. And then deadly effect, it can penetrate deflection, which you can use your energy to create deflection shields that can deflect certain damage, or up to a certain amount of damage based on how much power you put into it. So deflections stop energy attacks only. So you're basically, you spend it like 100 points and you concentrate, then it'll block up to so much damage equal to 100. Like here's a good example. If a deflection is powered up higher than the energy attack it's deflecting, it's a reflection. So I have a 100-point deflection. You hit me with a 50-point attack, I automatically reflect it to you. And then, let's see. So right here, so Karma Sin creates a 15-point deflection, calling it the Sama Karma Beam Barrier, up against a 24-point. See, it's another one of the issues that I have with this old game, because it says earlier that energy attacks you have to spend energy in increments of 10. Well, how am I getting 15 and 24? All right, we're just going to go with it. And yeah, so my 24 die attack penetrates 9 dice of damage through his 15-point shield. 9 dice of damage isn't anything. If I have like say 75 defense or whatever, that's not even going to deal any damage to me. So like it makes these examples at lower level. When you get higher level, it's a totally different ball game. Still fun, but we'll talk about higher level maybe in another video. And then it goes into some of the signature attacks, like the Goku's Kamehameha Blast. It's either 900 or 2,000 energy he puts into that thing. Do you really want to roll 2,000 dice? I mean, it'd be fun, but I wouldn't want to roll 2,000 dice. That would take forever today. Dragon Ball Z, talking about this Theory 1, it's going to have like another one of these little things going into different effects, things like that. There's other things you can do with your power as well. So at the end of this, we can purchase flight and super speed. We can also super reflex. So if our mental stat is low, we can spend energy for a turn to increase our mental stat to try to go first. You can also spend energy to gain extra actions, so extra attacks or moves or defenses. Yeah, don't mind all this pencil in stuff. Don't mind that. Because, I mean, like, well, you'll see, like, wow, yeah, Brady, you basically times everything by 10. Well, like, we got to the point where like some of my guys had like, you know, hundreds of thousands of power level. Like I find everybody was throwing around 12 actions a turn with 110 energy. It took forever to do. Okay, what's your first attack? Okay, what's your second thing? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What are you doing now? All right, so it's one of these things. There may be like a cutoff. I was trying to create like a cutoff, or I was trying to increase the points cost to where people weren't just constantly doing plus 12s every turn. Because then the villain would do it, the 4 or 5 players would do it. Just think you're playing D&D, and every turn, all of your characters get 12 attacks that they can do a turn. All the dice rolls. It got out of control. Then you can also super strength for the purposes of bending and carrying and breaking and things like that. You can also create multiple images of yourself, kind of like TN can. And again, I mean, it starts out pretty pricey. Yeah, so basically they're like clones of yourself, just like TN does. And then you've got your brief recap of the fighting formula. So one page covers everything. It's got your rolls you need, knockbacks, goes into doing stuff, making attacks, other things like that. Then it goes into the next section of fighting mastery, so strategy and tactics. It's got the basic rules of combat, so strategy. Every time you face a battle, you're going to have a strategy. Okay, goes into tactics, gives you some options of real-life commandos. Tactics can allow you to cover each other in battle. Talks about situations, like you're tougher than they are, they're tougher than you are. Like there's the you tougher than they are. Or sorry, if they're tougher than you are, you're evenly matched. Talks about what to do right there. So it's great because I love how it like mentions some of this older stuff. As Musashi says in his famous Book of Five Rings, in contests of strategy, it is bad to let the enemy lead you. You must always lead him about. All right, tactical do's and don'ts. Talks about fighting tricks. Build several special techniques at every power level. So smaller dice bonuses, then a few with big dice bonuses. You know, if you can catch the opponent off guard, you hit him with a big attack, do a lot of damage. Talks about staying close, combining powers for better effect. Spend points on boosting reactions, not powers. Yeah, the more you can do, the more you can clobber him. So like when you're going like 12 attacks a turn, you would just go up there and just be like E-Honda in his face. But then the enemy would buy extra actions as well, so then he's able to just dodge all your attacks. You know, it's great. You get that really cool like anime feel from Dragon Ball Z, but statistically, like when it comes to rolling dice, and it takes forever. So that's something, if I was to run a game, there would be some changes and amendments I would make to make the game more fluid. Not really quite sure what I will do yet, but if you're interested in knowing, let me know. Then it goes into an example of play right here. It's even got their stats, how they're breaking down their stats, their power, they're powering up, the damage they're taking, the energy they're using. And then it's great that it's got a whole section on writing your saga. This is for GMs, how to write your own saga. Talks about the Dragon Ball Z world, things like that. Talks about campaigns and challenges, quests, the defenders of the planet. Hey, it worked in Mortal Kombat, right? Righting wrong. Talks about things like that, like you're a crime fighter, powerful enough motivations, get around the Dragon Ball problem, right? You're playing Dragon Ball Z, somebody dies, you're just like, well, we're going to go collect the Dragon Balls. Well, as a GM, you'd be like, well, guess what? I'm going to throw some wrenches at that and make it a very long, drawn-out process, just to avoid them collecting them all and making wishes. All right. Story arcs and plots. It's actually, this section is pretty well done for almost a 20-year-old book. Subplots, right? I've talked about plots and subplots in some of my GM Study Hall videos. If you haven't checked those out, maybe go take a look at those about plots and subplots. All these little things that are going on in the background. Talks about the beat chart. I've even talked about this, right? Like the development, the cliffhanger, the climax, the resolution. It talks about all this basic story writing stuff right here. So it's fantastic. Plot beats talks about the hook, gives you some examples. The kidnapping, the false accusation. Cliffhanger, you know, there's an ambush or a battle, you know, the fight, or the monster. Right? This section is really great for GMs. Even if you're not going to GM this game, this section is really good reference for story writing for other games. So I definitely suggest looking into this stuff, or at least, you know, doing some research on Google or the internet or whatever. Talks about non-player characters, then it goes into running the game. The fudge factor, fantastic. It's one of the videos that maybe I'll do later is for GMs is fudging rolls. Not necessarily in your favor, but if you want things to go a certain way, the fudge factor is like, well, maybe you did hit, or you didn't, or you did succeed, wink, wink, or you didn't succeed, sad face. Even though the roll says they did or didn't, you can fudge it a little bit to drive your story forward without them really knowing. Then it talks about even creating your own Tenkaichi Budokai. It's got the little tournament bracket right here. It's even got a section for using the Dragon Ball Z action figures, right? It's great. Okay? Now, with that section, let's go back to the front right quick here because I skipped all that. So you've got your table of contents, got the introduction, talks about Dragon Ball Z. It goes over the entire Saiyan saga, like what happens. Raditz, Nappa, Vegeta, Piccolo. I don't want to give any spoilers, even though this is so old. Giant Monkey, that kind of stuff. It's even got your Dragon Ball Z episode guide right there. Then it goes into the different heroes. So Goku, look at his stat block. 8,000 power level, 270 power up. He has a movement of 110. His physical of 24. He's got a power stat of 95 total. He has 120 defense and 240 hits. I want you to look at that. Now we're going to go... Okay, we got Gohan, Piccolo. It talks all about like the different translations from Japanese to English, what some stuff mean. It's kind of cool. Krillin, Bulma. Yeah, Bulma's even in there. Tien, Yamcha, the whole crew. The whole crew. Look at Vegeta. He has power stat 105. Okay? So he's going to throw an energy attack at you, 105, plus 3d6. Say we get a 12. So now we're 117. Goku's going to try to evade. He can't. Can't evade. He's got a 75 total. Even if he rolls, you know, max, it still doesn't get him enough. Well, I think 3 6s automatically hits. So if you get 3 6s, or you can automatically evade, or if Vegeta gets 3 1s, he automatically misses, right? But this is kind of how like these things are designed. So if you're going to play this game, definitely look at this. Keep an eye on stats, so somebody doesn't get bloated like this. Or like with fighting, 75 fighting versus a 7. All right, that's fine. They can just throw punches all day. But energy attacks, nope. Not if Vegeta probably can't even evade Goku's energy attacks, right? So it's something to look at. Okay, you got Nappa, you got the Cybermen, Raditz, you know. Then it's got the Dragon Ball Earth, right? You got your map. It's got your legend here, all the different cities and places, and it talks about them all. Talks about the Red Ribbon Army, Capsule Corp, you know, Korin's Tower, the Kame. It's got his stat block and his little place. Right? Talks about the Dragon Balls, Namex Dragon Balls, Earth's Dragon Balls, the Eternal Dragon. He's got 180 power skill. What? You got Master Roshi. You know, you got Chi-Chi. Oxkane that goes into the universe. You got Planet Namek. Talks about Planet Vegeta. Gorilla. Talks about the other world. Right? Snake Way. King Kai's world. So you've got like, you know, all kinds of stuff to play with, Saiyan Saga wise. Now obviously the other books that I kind of snuck in here talk about different locations, right? So I don't know if they made more than the 3. Because I know that they were originally planning to do a Cell Saga when I was following it, and I don't think it ever came out. And then, yeah, then it goes into the Snake Princess in the Snake Way. And then it goes into the basic training. So that's it. That's That's the book. It's super quick. It's super easy to learn. There are some flaws, I will admit, but the game is 20 years old. But I definitely recommend if you want to play a Dragon Ball Z role-playing game. All right, gamers. So that was a look through the first book of the Dragon Ball Z adventure role-playing game. It's pretty quick. Like, the book isn't super thick. There's a lot of lore and fluff and other characters and stuff in there. But it's got so it uses their old instant fusion rules, like I talked about. So now, before I go any more, I want to talk about some pros, and then we're going to continue from there. Okay? So 3 pros. Okay? Just to make things easy. So it's easy to pick up and it's easy to play. So as you can see, like I said, right, the book isn't that thick. If you can even find one of these anymore, would be a miracle. Maybe somebody on eBay is selling one. But yeah, so the rules section itself was pretty short. There wasn't a lot to it. It was pretty easy to understand. When I got it, most of the book I looked through was stats for existing characters, and it talks about the lore and history, and it goes over the beginning of it, how it went over what happened in the Saiyan Saga, in an episode recap and all that other stuff, right? So that was most of the book. The rules, pretty short, pretty sweet, allows you to just pick up the game and get going, which is really good, especially for games back then. Because back then, I remember when I was playing role-playing games, we had First Edition, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Second Edition, Third Edition. A lot of those games were big and cumbersome, and a lot of books. That was all you needed. All kinds of adventures. It was just up to your imagination. So anybody can pick it up and anybody can play it. So if you can get a hold of it, I suggest you do so. So the second one, easy character creation. So you saw, we didn't create a character yet. I was thinking of doing a video specifically about it, but it's so fast. You roll a few dice and you spend a couple of points. You saw in the book, there's 2 pages that have 4 character sheets. The character sheet is half a page. It's super fast. So I don't think I'm going to do a video on it. But obviously you can see, and we talked about how to do it. So it's super easy, right? So you pick it up. You could spend a couple of hours, read through the rules, and really get a grasp. Get your group together. Everybody can make characters in 5 minutes. I remember that when I was playing it back in the day. Somebody wanted to come play. Oh, yeah, dude, I love Dragon Ball Z. I'm like, hey, man, I'm running this Dragon Ball Z role-playing game. Oh, can I play? Yeah, sure. He sits down. I give him the character sheet. I'm like, here, here's some dice, roll, spend some points, done. Give him a name, generate some techniques, come up with a little bit of backstory. Back then I wasn't as big on backstory story stuff, because I was younger then, and I wanted to get in there and we wanted to just punch stuff like they do in Dragon Ball Z, which is perfectly fine. But I think now if I was to run this game, it would be I would do a lot better with my storytelling. And I could put together a really intricate story. Obviously, you wouldn't run it like the Dragon Ball Z series goes, but I could come up with some pretty cool stuff. And with the easy character generation and easy rules, we can get right into it. Okay. Then the third one is it allows you to exist in the world of Dragon Ball Z. So you look in there, it's got maps of the world, the Kame House, the Korin's Tower, Kami's Lookout, all that stuff, right? It's got all the details in there about the world of Dragon Ball Z that you could live in. So you could have those adventures, in the early parts of the game. Honestly, a lot of the early part of the game, you're not going to be, Super Saiyan flying around, blowing up moons and stuff like that. It's going to be low power, so you're going to be able to have those great adventures in and around the world, exploring, doing new challenges and things like that, which is really great. Because, some games that I've tried to run, I'm like, well, I can mimic the combat abilities of Dragon Ball Z, but this allows me to immerse myself into the world of Dragon Ball Z. All right, gamers, so that was the pros. Now let's talk about some of the cons that I have with this game. Now, some of them I've taken from when I was playing it originally, and then now that I've gone back to it almost 20 years later, Some of the things, now these aren't like bad. This isn't like going to stop me from playing it. But it's just something that if you're looking to get into it, something you might want to consider. All right, so the first one is inconsistent rules. So you notice that there was a couple of times in there that when, like, it'll say, like, in the main body, it'll say X, you know, like when it was all, like, talking about energy attacks, like, the main body says 1 point of energy equals 1 die of damage. But then you look at the page that's got, like, the little reference sheet. It says for every 10 points of energy is 1 die of damage. What do you use? Well, so say I make a 100 point attack. That's the difference between I'm throwing 10 dice of damage at you or 100. Now, you've got to think, right? On a d6, the average is going to be 4, 3 to 4. We're going to shoot high, say 4. I roll 100, that's 400 damage. Now you look at how your defense is generated, right? It's your physical stat times 5. So say you've got a physical of 10, you have 50. So you'll reduce that 400 damage by 50. And then your hits, or your hit points, is 10 times your physical. You have 100 hit points. Well, now you're dead. With taking 350 damage to the face at a 100-point attack. And a 100-point attack is something you could throw at initial character creation. Obviously, it's going to be a big chunk of your power, but you could do it. Or it's the difference between I throw 10 dice of damage at you, which is going to be like 40 damage. Now, some characters you would make would have a defense of 40 or more. You just wouldn't even take damage. So where's the balance? Which is going to bring us, that actually ties into the third one, but let's talk about the second one first. So the rules don't reflect high-level play. Like, you look at some of the characters, like you look at Goku, right? He's got like, let's get him here. Let's look at Goku. So Goku, like he's got stats, like his power stat is like 95. Right? And then when the rules talk about like if he's able to generate or if he's able to activate like a power, he'd roll his power plus his combat and 3d6 versus the difficulty value of the energy attack based on how much energy. You can throw pretty huge attacks with that. Now later on, I mean, if you guys are interested, I've got the other books, the Frieza Saga, and I also have the Trunks Saga and the Garlic Jr. and the Android Sagas. But now let me just give you a little sneak peek at what you're going to see in this book. Let's look at Garlic Jr. Androids, because some of their stats should just get out of control. Now, these other books add some new rules. But they don't go back and look at the original rule sets when looking at how things are going to balance out. Looking at the original rules versus, let's look at Android 18. Okay, his power skill total, his power plus his combat is 500. 500. Now, if you look at and then his lowest status is mind total stat, which is 40. You look at when it's talking about the basic difficulty values from really easy to mega hard is 26 or 28 or whatever. It's got a 40. If he tries a mind thing, he automatically passes it. Where's the scaling, right? That's one of the things that I had trouble with when I was running it initially. My players would get so high that the initial rule set wouldn't be able to govern them. And I mean, I guess maybe that's a design issue. But it's one of those things, if you're just looking for a nice hard set of rules, like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Super easy. You know what does what at any level of play. This game doesn't do that without some work on your part as a GM, I think. Myself. If you have thoughts on that, maybe put them down in the comments below. Let's get a conversation. Or if you've joined us over on Discord, throw that over there because I think a lot of the guys that are over there are big Dragon Ball Z fans as well. So then we can all have a conversation about that. Now the last one, it has lots of sidebars and optional changes that can be made. You saw in the book how like almost every other page had sidebars. Either had story information, it had stat information, it had optional changes, this and that and this and that, which is great. Which gives you options to, like, if you don't like how this is done, you can do it this way. Like, I think there was one of the ones that's in there, like, instead of, like, the power being based off of combat, you could have it being based off of, like, mental, you know, because you're using your mind to focus it and stuff like that. I mean, that's a pretty cool change. But, like, you say you're a new GM coming in here and you're reading, okay, this is what the rule does, or, oh, reference this sidebar if you want to do it this way, or this sidebar if you want to do it this way. You can get kind of confused, and you're like, well, what's going to be the best? Because if you start the game doing it one way, consistency is going to be a key. Do it the same way, you know, don't be, what do they say? What did my parents used to say? You don't switch horses in the middle of the river, right? You don't halfway through the game, well, this really isn't working out anymore. Let's do it this way, right? So that's just how I feel about the game. I love it. It's great. I've already got some subscribers out there interested in playing. If you're interested in playing, come over to Discord and let's talk about it. I could potentially put something together. I've got several ideas of games I do want to put together, but it's just the time, right? And the people that are interested. I could, because as the guy said, the game is quick to pick up and put together and play. It really comes down to just making stories. So I would love to do that for you guys sometime in the near future if you're interested. All right, gamers. So that was a look in the book. That was my pros and cons of the game. Hope you enjoyed how I kind of set that up. First time doing the pros and cons, you know, visible. Normally I just kind of talk about it. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. Also, if you want to support the channel, hit the subscribe button. And don't forget the bell icon so you can be the first to view and comment on my videos when I post them. And like I've said before, I would love to see you over on Discord, joining us in some of the great gaming conversations we're having over there. Link will be in the description box below. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at GameMastersDone1. I'll put up occasional updates on content I'm going to be producing and also some of the stuff I'm going to be doing in my gaming life if you guys are interested in seeing stuff like that. Also, I want to see what you guys are doing. You can put it over there on Twitter or in the comment section below. I want to see it either way. So with that, I'm Brian, your Game Master, and happy gaming.